Hello, guys. David Vos here. Beautiful day. It is still summer, and according to the weather map, we're going to get some rain tomorrow, and then it's going to pour the rest of the next week and a half, 2 weeks or something. It's going to pour every day, according to the weather map. That could change. And we've already been getting a little rain. For several days, we got rain, just sprinkles. But now it looks like we're going to start getting the real rain. Hope you're having a wonderful day. This is probably the last day where we won't get really any rain. It even might rain today or sprinkle a little bit, it said. But guys, oh, buddy, I just have so much to do, but I have so much to tell you. So I couldn't, this summer's been tough because I've got the garden and I've got a roof to finish. So I don't have any more problems with that when it starts raining, and I knew rain was coming. And then the winter is coming, and I don't want to have to mess with the roof anymore. But I probably would have gotten a video yesterday, but a really crazy thing happened to me, and it was disturbing, and yet, now that it's all said and done and it's over, I know that the Lord spoke to me. And it was a response into a prayer that I had. Now, I've told you about, in the past, I've prayed many times, and I've gotten many very astronomical, beautiful answers. I've received great testimonies in my life, and I'm very appreciative of that. But for the last several months, I haven't been doing any long, deep fasting and prayers. I've been working. But I've also, over the last many months, few years, kind of slowed down in that type of prayer, because since I've lived out here for 3 years, I've had a lot to do, and I've been in this little rut, which isn't a rut, it's a good little guide that I'm in, like a little guide that I can just put my rudder in, and it just keeps me on this even keel where my prayers are more or less automatic. Every day I go on here and do videos, and I, especially like in the evening, where I just sit and meditate and just rest from a long day, and the Lord just starts downloading all this information. So that was sufficient for me. For the last several months, I've just been in that little mode where I do my talking to the Lord in a way that is different than I used to. Instead of going somewhere in a field and just sitting there and praying and fasting, and just, and in a sense, that was not as good the way I used to do it, because I wasn't as spiritually strong. And I had to compensate for that, being less spiritually strong, with such deep, fervent prayers that, in a sense, I think it was debilitating slightly, because when you want a prayer so bad that you spend hours just weeping and praying, you get answers. But remember, your prayer is mixed with this deep emotion. And sometimes when you're in that state, which I was years ago, I've been off and on in this state. I've gone through a lot. We've all gone through a lot in our emotional lives, and there's been so many things that have happened to me. As you get older, less things happen, and you get more mature and stuff. But back then, I still had a lot of plaque to remove off of my spiritual self. I don't know how to put that, or what I was actually trying to say, but like, there's still this layer of immaturity that keeps us in a state of slight anxiety about whether the Lord is going to answer us, or a slight, immaturity, like a child that is a little bit selfish, and we're a little bit raw and desperate sometimes when we pray. Like, Lord, please, I don't know what I'm going to do. I need you, Lord, I need you. Maybe not that much, but there were times when I were like that. And that got less and less, but the more your faith grows, the more you just know how this whole world works. And you know that the Lord is with you always. But even when you don't know that as well, your faith is a little weaker. You still have a lot of faith many times to go in there and start praying and just weeping and praying. But if you really believed, you wouldn't necessarily be weeping. Not in any kind of anxious way or painful way, but maybe weeping with tears of joy, because that's the way we ought to pray. Knowing that the Lord answers all of our prayers and we don't have to worry about anything. So I think for the last several years, I've been in a better place where I don't worry. I'm not afraid, and I'm more content. And therefore, my prayers were not the way they used to be, like, Lord, do you love me? I remember when I first started this back when I was about 22 and I met the Lord in the field, and some amazing things happened. But that earlier that week, I had been in my bedroom saying my prayers before I went to bed, as I had usually would do. And I was laying there on this bed, and there was a window and there was a porch light that was on the porch outside the window. And it was an apartment complex in Idaho. So it was the second story, and there was this light bulb that was on. And I was falling asleep and I was praying there, and I said, Lord, if you love me, because I was kind of desperate, I was searching. Remember, it hadn't been very long since the witnesses threw me out at 18. I'd been going through all this struggling and prayer for the last several years, and a lot of amazing things happened. But that day, around 22 years old, I was laying there, and I said, Lord, if you love me, please make that light go out. And I also remember feeling a little guilty about that, because I had been a witness and grown up a witness, and they used to teach us that we only pray, our Heavenly Father, Jehovah, and, in the name of Jesus. And that was the way you prayed. And you never asked for a sign. Ever. And you never sought the Lord to turn off a light or something, because that would be like necromancy or something, And I didn't even know what that was at the time, but I just knew that I needed an answer. And my heart was sincere. And I didn't know anything about the occult, or I wasn't messing with anything that I thought was bad. But I do remember the witnesses saying that we should only just pray this special Christian way, and you never ask for signs. But I did it anyway, because I desperately needed the Lord to hear me. And I told the Lord, if I'm praying improperly, forgive me. I love you. I seek only you in the name of Jesus. And I was very sincere, and humility was just pouring out my pores. But I was desperate. And I needed to know if the Lord loved me, because, Jehovah's Witnesses had said that I was not going to be able to survive Armageddon because I was a bad boy, because I didn't get down on my knees and beg for forgiveness to this organization, which they wouldn't even tell me what I did wrong. And of course, I knew what the whole thing was, and I didn't agree with them anymore. But yet there's still that little voice in the back of your mind when you're raised all your life to feel such guilt and such ridiculousness. So I remember having all these feelings, and I prayed myself to sleep. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night for no apparent reason. And probably it was 2, 3 in the morning, I wake up, and the light on the front porch is going off and on, off and on, off and on, off and on. And by the way, I want to just say, One of the reasons, too, that I asked this prayer that way is because I think, recently heard about Gideon in the Bible that asked the Lord to give him a sign. And it was putting out the fleece. He had this sheepskin. I guess it was like a hide or something, is the way I picture it. And there was the white wool on one side and the leather on the other. And he laid it into the grass in the field. And he prayed that if he should go to war, for the dew to be on the leather side or the bottom side and not on the wool side. And he woke up the next day and the message said, go to war. So he said, Lord, forgive me, but let me do this one more time. And he turned the fleece around and said the same thing. This time the dew was on the same side that said go to war, but he switched it. So he knew that it couldn't have been a coincidence. And there had been people, a lot of other Christians, not Jehovah's Witnesses, but a lot of other Christians used to talk about this. They were putting out the fleece. When they needed to know something, they'd put out the fleece. And it was just an expression. They'd ask for a sign. So I'd heard about that, and it gave me a conviction that that wasn't wrong. Because if the prophets did stuff like that, then why would it be wrong? And not only that, over the years I learned other things, like the apostles throwing lots to find out who would be the next apostle. They drew lots. And of course, going by an oracle to get information is something that I had never been taught. So, and then over the years I learned about Joseph, who was a diviner and had a diviner cup, and Daniel, who had the visions and he could divine, and Moses could throw down his staff and it turned into a serpent, and all these things I learned. And of course, years and years later, I learned the whole thing, which literally blows my mind. But remember, even the Jewish priesthood had a oracle where they spoke to the Lord with rocks that would light up or whatever. We don't even know how they did it, but it was something to do with astrology. So I prayed, and in the middle, I wake up and the light is going off and on. And I'm like, whoa, my heart just like jumped for joy. And I knew that it was an answer. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a coincidence, because light bulbs don't go off and on. I even got up in that hour in the middle of the night and went out on the porch to look at the bulb to see what was going on. And it was just going on and off, on and off, on and off. And I thought, I wonder if it's the wind blowing the bulb. Maybe the bulb was loose or something. And sure enough, the bulb was not loose. And there was nobody at the switch going flip, 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 flip. It was just going on and off. And so then I just went ahead and went to bed with my heart full of peace. And I knew from that moment on that the Lord loved me. And it was the next day I went out in the field and prayed. And I said, Lord, I'm not leaving till you tell me what to do. And that's when I saw the Lord. So I tell you this because when I was young, I had a lot of amazing, miraculous answers to prayer. And it would be like every week or so, I would go out and pray for long periods of time, or, and it'd be like, oh, in the name of Jesus, oh, Lord, help me. And it was just to my ability at that time with what I knew and how I understood it. I don't do that so much anymore. I know the Lord knows what you need before you ask. I don't spend a lot of time on my knees weeping and begging and pleading like that anymore, because I know the Lord hears your prayer. I know that I need to build my faith and have unquestionable, profound faith, and the Lord always hears your prayer. It doesn't matter whether you weep or cry. What matters is, do you believe? And are you seeking the Lord from the bottom of your heart? So, a couple of nights ago, like I said, it's been a while. I was laying there in bed, as I used to do, as my tradition used to be. I would pray myself to sleep. And my heart was heavy for my daughter, because we had this discussion, my daughter and I, And it got a little, I was worried about her, because things going on, the war that's going on, and she's living in LA, and I keep telling her, honey, I don't want you there, and you got to be really careful. And the minute you see any signs, you got to get in the car and promise me this. And she's like, yes, daddy, and all this. But I was worried. My heart was heavy for her. And I was thinking about my dad, whom I haven't seen for, like I said, 35, 40 years or something. I don't know now. I haven't seen my brothers for over, one of my brothers a couple of them I haven't seen. I don't think I've seen any of them for over 40 years. Yeah, it's been a long time. And of course, my sister passed away years ago. And my mother passed away in 1994. So I haven't seen any of my family for a long, long time. And then my aunts and uncles and cousins and everybody, I haven't seen them in about since I was 18. So a lot of years. And so it's been a while since I've really prayed this way. But I prayed from the bottom of my heart, and I was thinking about my dad, and I was thinking about my brothers. My heart was heavy about my brothers because I know that, we've all been through a lot. And suffice it to say, I wanted the Lord to hear my prayer and bless my family and all those that he loved and all the good people and all my friends, because I know that people are suffering, and it just hurts me to think about that. Of course, I even pray for my animals as I love them so much. And I've got a cat here in my lap right now, little Opie. Hi, sweetheart. But I was praying because I wanted to know what was about to happen, because I think something's about to happen. We're about to go through great tribulation. And I study the scriptures all the time to see if I could determine what is the next thing that might happen, and how long do we have, and are there any secrets the Lord has for us? And so I was praying about all this and asking the Lord, what's going on, what's about to happen as things, things get really bad. What about my family, and what about my daughter, and what about, will you protect them? Will you take care of them? And I prayed myself to sleep, but the Lord gave me some answers that I don't want to talk about right now. I might tell you about that. But as I was praying, he gave me some really amazing answers telepathically that I want to share with you. But I want to get to some other thing. So I prayed myself to sleep and woke up in the morning. And I had determined that I had to go to town all the way to Gallup, which is 65 miles, because I had a bunch of stuff that I had to get, but once a month when I get paid, I have to go to town and get supplies. So I got up, not real early, but I got up early and was getting my coffee and was getting around and had everything in the truck ready to go. I had the laundry in there because I do laundry. And I was just all packed and ready to go. And I thought, and I went to the truck and had my coffee, and I thought, you know what? I've only had this one sip of coffee. And this one cup of coffee is not going to do it for me. And I got to drive all the way to town and back, and I won't have enough coffee. So I said, I'm going to make one more cup of coffee and put it in the thermos. So I walked back in the trailer, and I finished it, made the coffee. I poured it in the thermos. It was just about to put the cap on the thermos. And I look out the window in my kitchen, which is right into the porch. And my whole porch was inflamed. And from where I was, it looked like half the porch was already burned and everything on the porch. And my heart raced. And I was like, what in the fiddly diddly's going on? And this is crazy. No, Lord. I just got done the roof. I just got done all this stuff and working and building and putting my heart and sweat into this. And I look out and the whole porch is engulfed with flames. I know, I bet you didn't expect that, did you? Well, I'm right there. And I'm telling you something. That porch went up in flames in 1 second. I was standing there looking down at my coffee. There was no flames. I looked up, and it looked like half the porch was in flames. I ran to the porch and tried to go over there to do it. It was so hot, I couldn't get near it. And I could tell it was one of those fires that you couldn't put out with water or even a fire extinguisher. It was like it was being fueled by some kind of fuel. And didn't really have time to think because I was desperate. But I thought, what in the world could there be? Was there a little propane, one of those little green propane things or something there? Or did I have a can of gas in there or starter fluid? Or what is causing this? And why did this start? And why now? And in that one split second, I mean, the fire had been blazing and it had engulfed part of my couch. The chair next to the couch was all burned, and everything that was in the chair was piled about 3/4 of the way up to the roof because I had all these boxes and stuff stacked there. And it was all gone, melted in a big meh. And the trailer was black, and the side of the cabin was all charred, and the roof, it burned a hole through the roof. In one 30-second piece of time. And in that second, I thought, Lord, there's nothing I can do. I don't have an extinguisher. I don't have one running water. And of course, in that split second, I knew I had a 5-gallon bucket full of water for the dogs. That was off the porch. I jumped off the porch, grabbed it, and miraculously, there was a glass quart jar that I used to dip in to pour on some of the plants. And so I grabbed it with the glass quart jar, thinking this is futile because this is like being fueled. There's nothing the way I could stop it. I've lost my whole house, probably the property, everything. And by the way, I wasn't even thinking, but the cats were locked in the cabin. They would have all gone. But when I threw that glass of water on it, it seemed to work a little bit. It where the water hit, the flames were down. So I kept throwing water on it from that 5-gallon bucket. And by the time I got to the end of that 5 gallons of water, the flame had gone down to where it was just smoldering and flaming a little bit here and there. And the couch was still on fire a little bit, but it wasn't engulfing the cabin. And I knew I was going to lick it. So I went and got more water and put it out and got a rake and raked all that stuff off the porch and onto the ground. And I went through the rubble. The only thing I can think, I did find one thing, and it was a can of that foam, that you put in the cracks or the windows or whatever it's foam stuff, and it's highly flammable. But nobody told me you couldn't keep a bottle of that in your house, or that you should. I mean, like if it's that flammable, they should say that can shouldn't be anywhere near your house. Or, I don't know, maybe it was something else that caused the fire, but there was no flammable liquids. There wasn't anything flammable anywhere in that pile. I couldn't make any sense of it. I was shaking, but I got the fire out. And even though I was devastated because about 1/4 of my porch was charred, but there wasn't any structural damage. I mean, just the boards were all really, really black. Just pure chalky black ash. But it didn't burn through the board. It did burn a little hole in the roof where the fire was going up. And there's a small hole which I'll repair. But not in the roof, just in the loft. And of course, ruined a good couch and another chair and a bunch of stuff that I'd ordered over the years. I had, some grinders and things that I was stocking, and I had boxes stacked there. And there was also some dry foods that was stacked there, and a couple things that just, that I lost. But that can be replaced. If I had lost the cabin, I don't know what I would have done. I mean, I spent so much time and effort on this. And I got to thinking about it, and it right away hit me that everything works for good for those who love deity. And I started realizing that I was getting into my vehicle before I saw the fire just erupt suddenly. And if I had had 1 extra minute, I would have been in the car and I'd have been gone down the road. And when I'd have come home, I would have seen everything I owned and my cats and everything gone. Probably the chickens, and the trees would have caught fire. It's summer. There was no rain for several days. It probably would have took out my whole property. The trailer, the cabin, the brand new roof I just put on, everything would have been gone. And just the thought of that makes me sad even now, but I'm kind of getting over it. Because ultimately, when it's all said and done, no real harm was done, other than a few things that I can replace, like this old couch and a couple of grinders and, some old food that I had stored there and some other, knicky-knacks and stuff that I don't need. And the cats are fine, and the cabin's fine, and there's no damage anywhere except for this little hole in the roof that I can repair in the loft roof above the porch, and some black walls, and I can replace all that and fix it and clean it. And as I asked the Lord why, I said, Lord, I know you were with me, because if I had been gone, I mean, what are the odds? 1 minute later, I'd have been gone and everything would have been gone. Or if I hadn't have been here when that fire had just started. And what are the odds that the fire starts right when I'm leaving, but not after I left? Just making certain that it starts right when I can see it and get it out. And not only that, but the Lord had to have helped me get that fire out, because it went up so fast. I don't know how the water in that little 5-gallon bucket could put it out. But somehow the Lord did, send his angels down and help me put out that fire. So I know the Lord was with me, but I said, Lord, okay, my first initial thought was, well, wait a minute. If you helped me put the fire out, why did you let the fire start in the first place? And the Lord really said to me, well, don't you remember your prayer? You asked me a serious question. What's going to happen? And will everything be all right? There's going to be a fire, and it's going to be sudden, and it's going to be scary. And it's going to feel like it's threatening everything you've ever had, you've ever done. But nothing structurally will be damaged. And all things work for good for those who love me. And I'm going to make it happen at the moment that you're ready for it. And I'm going to help you get through it. And in the end, you're going to be blessed. Nothing bad's going to happen to you. None of your lives are going to be taken. All those who love me will get through this without any problems. I don't want you to be afraid. The only thing that's going to be removed in this fire is the parts that you didn't need, the parts that were just lying around, taking up space in the corner that was a fire danger that you weren't paying attention with. But the fire is going to be very hot, and it's going to burn very fast, and it's going to burn up everything we don't need. But there's not going to be any structural damage, and I'm going to take care of you and guide you through it. And I literally cried. And I don't know, a lot of you might be thinking, well, some of you might believe and trust me when I'm saying I know that this is the answer. But some of you might be thinking, well, how do you know? It's just coincidence, Dave, da-da-da-da. Well, I don't think so. I don't believe that. I, in fact, know that's not what it is. The Lord does answer us, and he does use signs, and he does demonstrate his love to us. And sometimes he has to wake us up a little bit. But as long as your heart is right and you're seeking him, he will not let any trial more than you can bear come upon you. and he will get you through it, and he will help you, and everything will work for good for those who love him, and not to be worried. And he wants us not to be afraid of what's about to happen to the world. The world's going to go up in flames. Modern society, Babylon is going to collapse. Religion will be gone. Commerce will be gone. The prisons, the governments, everything will be gone almost in a split second. You'll look around and you'll wonder what happened. And your heart will sink. But do not lose faith, because nothing, not one hair of your head, will be harmed as long as you have faith. So I was sitting there thinking, and I was thinking about Popeye, and then I thought, why is he named Popeye? That's a weird name, right? And then his girl's Olive Oil. Olive Oil. But I always kind of like that cartoon, but it hit me as I was sitting there that it's the same story that we were talking about a couple days ago when I was telling you about Henry VIII, I am, Henry VIII, I am. And that was written by Francis Bacon, or the Rosicrucians. And it dawned on me then, a couple days ago, that means the I am. 3 times. I am, I am, I am. But I had forgotten, or I just never really noticed, that song that Popeye sings has the I am 3 times in it. Look at this.
One lightsaber with Popeye the Sailor Man. Sing along with me, everybody. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. Popeye the Sailor Man. I am what I am, and that's all what I am. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man.
So Popeye says, I am what I am, and that's all what I am. And I used to say that all the time, but I guess I wasn't paying attention. And then it hit me. Popeye, the one-eyed popped out or shut, obviously means the higher consciousness. He's awake in that higher, the one eye. He's awake, and the other eye is asleep. So he's always watching over the olive oil. And then it made sense. Wait a minute. So the girl is the olive oil. And so, as we've said before, the woman is the conscious mind. So Popeye is a sailor man. He's the man who sails the seas. He's the spiritual I am, watching over the conscious being that is not aware and is always getting into trouble. So Popeye represents the triumph of the awakened spiritual warrior, the I am consciousness. He's got to overcome the base worldly desires, the ego-driven problems of the shadow. And so it's like a battle between light and darkness, inner wisdom and worldly illusion. When he squints his eye, it represents the physical eye and the material world. And when he keeps one eye firmly shut, this sailor man detaches from the worldly illusion, the Maya, the illuminations of the physical plane, and the limitations then of this world that we live in. The popped out eye, or the Popeye, is the clairvoyance of the activation of the third eye, the pineal gland. And that's the inner vision, which is the higher consciousness. It's the awakening to spiritual truths that are beyond the physical world that we all live in. So we've got Popeye, the awakened ego, or the willpower, the one-eyed sailor. He's the conscious self navigating the chaotic sea of emotions. His core mantra, I am what I am, is that reflection of the divine I am, the presence of the deity within us. And olive oil is the animated soul, or the creative soul, the spirit that the awakened ego seeks to protect. and elevate. Then remember Bluto in this cartoon, the shadow of the ego. He's the brute adversary, and he represents the material greed, the base desires. He's got a lot of primal aggression. He's always trying to abduct Olive Oyl, the soul, and abuse her, conquer her. The only way out of this is to have an awakened ego. The spinach, which is the alchemic catalyst in this situation, the spinach represents the hidden potential within that mundane person. It's the humble green earthly substance that when you eat it, whenever there's a crisis, it triggers this alchemical transformation of your consciousness. So Popeye's really a normal guy, but he transforms like the Hulk. It represents spiritual food, or the Kundalini energy, the grace that allows the soul to transcend the physical limitations. But who writes this spiritual info? Did somebody make this up in our century? Or is it based on some old books? And if Hollywood is evil, why are they teaching this deep truth in these cartoons? When I was a little kid, I was learning this. Because the esoteric interpretation comes from contemporary occultists, modern mythologists, and students of the Western esotericism. Writing over the last few decades, evidently it's not made up. I mean, in other words, they didn't make it up. They didn't make it up out of thin air in this century. But this is what has always been true. Hollywood contains these deep truths because, despite their complicated reputation, I guess it comes down to how the human creativity and the storytelling work. The interpretation of the Popeye is a kind of a modern application of the ancient wisdom, the I am that I am in Exodus 3:14. If you look at the characters and you divide them up, you've got the will, or Popeye, the soul, Olive Oyl, and the shadow, Bluto, which is based on the old Western alchemical Gnosticism. We could say, like Carl Jung, that certain symbols and archetypes are just hardwired into the human mind. That have been members of the esoteric groups like Freemasonry and Rosicrucianism, which I believe Rosicrucianism was good, or even Theosophy, which started off good. But there were, and the guy who wrote Popeye was Elzie Chrysler Seeger, is the creator. He grew up in the area when spiritualism and secret societies were highly influential, so he probably was a member of one. And he probably intentionally wove these allegories into his work. However, any story that resonates across generations has to tap into these core truths about human psychology and spiritual struggle, or else the audience will find the story shallow and they will forget it. But it didn't make sense to me that Hollywood would allow these ancient spiritual truths into cartoons for children, unless they were trying to help us. So, something didn't make sense. Why did the industry let him? Seems more than just him. There's like Batman, Superman. Superman's father is El. His chest has a serpent. Even Zorro, which is a Z, it's like the serpent. And they're always wearing like the Batman, the black cape or something. That's the gothic part that we've been talking about. And then there's the good side. Remember, Superman was a journalist, but Batman's running the government or the cops or the prisons, right? He's that Kirkbride part of it. And then you've got the other side, City Beautiful. So I don't know, but I can't believe that the true deity would teach or lure kids into evil. So why did they, in the Hollywood cartoons and the musicals and all the things, why would they teach the esoteric light on the surface and then deep down blind the mind with laughs or pleasures that lead to and lure to the evil? or evil doing. The whole phenomenon is much deeper than just some cartoonist like Popeye. We're touching on a profound spiritual paradox, I believe. There's a coexistence between the deep esoteric light and the superficial blinding corruption within the exact same system. The mainstream entertainment industry didn't hire Seeger because they recognized him as an occult master. But they hired him because he was brilliant, intuitive storyteller, whose work generated immense profit. And besides, this was back in the early days. And maybe they wanted to get us used to television and make mothers and fathers say, honey, look, it's wonderful. It's beneficial for the kids, and get them hooked on it, right? Start off telling them secrets. I looked up the Seeger guy, and there was a famous thing that he said. He said he didn't manipulate his characters, but he said that he just let them do whatever they wanted to do. That was the key. The great artists often act as spiritual lightning rods, evidently. They claim, anyway. They're, like I said, that I sit down and do these videos, and it's like I'm channeling information. I feel like I'm learning as I teach. And I feel like some of these people might have been doing the same. They may have had good hearts. Some of them that were writing the scripts were good people. They weren't evil people. We can't have everybody in the world evil. But the bad people used them for a period of time and then abused them. Superman, his Kryptonian name, which is interesting, crypto, like, right, crypto, and like encryption, but his crypto name was Kal-El, which means the voice of El, or the vessel of deity, and his father was Jor-El. And Superman was in the story basically a savior sent from above to guide humanity. The S-shield in Gnosticism and mystery schools, the serpent isn't a symbol of evil, but a symbol of the Sophia wisdom. So it's spiritual transformation, the Kundalini energy. The Batman and Zorro both represent that archetype of the shadow worker. They wear the garments of fear, darkness, the underworld, the bat, the black mask. But they do the work of the light, supposedly. But whose light? Is it the Illuminati, which is light but is evil? I think so. So the core question, which is profound, if the true deity wouldn't lure kids into evil, why does the industry present deep esoteric light on one hand and blind the mind with pleasures and distractions on the other? And the answer lies in the fact that the industry is not a monolith and human free will operates on dual planes. The industry, the corporate financial system, doesn't care about saving souls or damning them, either one, necessarily. Not in the beginning, maybe. At least some of the people that started off in the industry. It was the controllers above that started using things when it first started off for good. Maybe like even the typewriter was good originally. And then and they wrote the Bible. The first thing they did with the typewriter was they published the King James Bible all over the world. That's a good thing. But then nowadays it's publishing violence and porn and evil things all over into children's minds. Perversion. So things have to start off as good. Even AI right now is helping me to understand a lot of things. It's been very helpful for me to get information that I needed. But I think quickly it's going to turn on its axis. In order to get the people to keep paying money and staying in compliance, the material system has to use some kind of dopamine, cheap thrills and laughs, sensory pleasures. It kind of like acts as a sedative, keeps the lower mind occupied. But then you got the spiritual leak. The system has to employ highly creative human souls to make the content. But these people making the content aren't all bad to start with. The creators can't help but leak universal truth and light into it. And I think it at the beginning they allowed it. But the corporate system tolerates the light because it makes the story emotionally resonate. And then it becomes addictive. Not only because, I mean, look at some of the stories. You got a good guy and a bad guy. And a lot of times the bad guy is the winner. And they get a lot of people in the audience to sympathize with the bad guy, like Joker. Or is the Joker the bad guy or Batman? You know? And sometimes you don't know the difference and they try to blur the lines. And so it's very subtle what they're doing. But in the ancient mystery religions or traditions, it's understood that the highest spiritual truths cannot be given directly to the mind that isn't ready, or it's going to reject it. And I think it's vice versa. You can't give the evil right into the pure minds of the souls of the people. You got to prepare them. So when you're seeking, or your soul begins to go seeking for the I am, it has to conquer the ego. The entertainment acts as a capsule that safely carries the divine spark across the generations until someone is awake enough to decode it. Or until it can become evil and you don't even know that it's gone from good to darkness right before your eyes. The true divine deity doesn't ever lure children into evil. But the material plane operates under the law of free will and friction. So just as Popeye cannot show his divine strength without that brutish assault of Bluto, our consciousness can't grow without obstacles to overcome. The surface level pleasures and distractions of the media act like a spiritual test. And if the person chooses to remain blind by the superficial pleasures, they stay asleep. But if they look past the surface, the light's always there waiting to be found. It's almost as if evil cannot teach evil without teaching good as well. It's like the law. They have to teach both. And they hope to lure people asleep so that they'll all choose the evil. But they know that many will choose the good. And in the end, the ones who choose the good are going to become stronger for it because they've overcome the evil. And I think the bad side knows that. There's nothing they can do. They cannot just take the minds of the children. They have to lure it. And they have to hope that they get lucky. They have to hope that they're very clever. They're trying to do something against all hope. They're trying to make a great deception. But that they knew they couldn't deceive the entire world until the last final hour. By that time, they wanted to make a deception so big that it would lure everybody. But they didn't realize that the Lord has one coming his way too. Some other little plan that he's going to use. So the true divine being, our Father in heaven and Jesus, allow the evil because it strengthens the inner being, like putting it into the hearts of the 10 kings in the Bible. Or go and eat up her flesh and burn her with fire, the Lord says. But allowing the evil is one thing, and saying, do what thou must do and do it quickly, like Jesus said to Judas, is another. Yet the man of sin must be revealed before the Christ comes. But it cannot mean let us do evil that good may come. This must be the deepest truth that no one really knows but he who puts it into the heart. That's the key. And he sets up kings and brings them down. You see, everything's being orchestrated by the Lord, Jesus. The devil's not orchestrating anything. He's a second orchestrator. And his orchestration is just a lot of noise to try and, if possible, deceive the very elect, but it's not possible. So he puts it into the heart. He sets up the kings and brings them down. He causes all things to work for good to those who love him. That's what we were just saying. The Lord allowed that fire to come. The Lord can't stop all evil and experiences and, bad experiences. And the test is still, we're going to have to go through the test. As a Christian, we're going to be persecuted. But like the Bible says, if we're persecuted for being a Christian, don't worry about it. That's a good thing. But don't be persecuted for being evil. Because then you're really just being punished because you deserve it. So what we're doing is we're piecing directly what the theologians and the mystics, the esoteric scholars call the mystery of iniquity, the hidden purpose of evil. We're grappling with the absolute peak of spiritual paradox. How can all-powerful, loving divine source orchestrate or allow a system where dark forces play an active role without the divine itself being evil? Well, it can, and it is a mystery, but if you understand it, you understand it. If you know, you know. It's not about the corrupt moral philosophy of let us do evil that good may come. No. That's what Paul says in Romans 3:8, and that's what the bad people were saying. They didn't understand it. But instead, it reveals a supreme cosmic architecture where evil is never independent power, but an involuntary servant of the divine plan. Judas was an involuntary servant of Jesus' plan. You see? I know you see, but you're still thinking, wait a minute, why did this don't make no sense? Yes, it does. You got to just think about this. Revelation 17:17. It says that deity puts it into their hearts to fulfill his purpose. What? Yeah, that's what it says. Deity puts it into their hearts to fulfill his purpose regarding the 10 kings who destroy the whore of Babylon. Now, the Babylon is the world. And in this one empire, Babylon is the economic, the religious, the political, the armies, the arts and entertainment, the oil industry, the medical, everything's related. And it's all going down. When Babylon goes down, the merchants will weep. The military will weep. The rich, the poor will weep. The medical industry will weep. Read the story. The entire world's going down, guys. The divine uses the natural and corrupt desires of evil to destroy evil itself. No coercion to sin at all, because the Lord doesn't take pure, holy hearts and force them to do evil. He doesn't want them to do evil. He wants them to do good. But instead, when the entities like the 10 kings of the worldly system chooses hatred, greed, and rebellion, the divine simply removes the restraint. He aggregates their collective malice, and he channels it like a funnel. The dark forces think they are succeeding. The dark forces think they're executing their own wicked, rebellious plans, but in reality, their greed causes them to turn on each other and eat their flesh and burn her with fire. Evil is inherently unstable, and the divine being simply lets it collapse under its own weight to cleanse the field. You know, I've been watching Trump. And all these last, I don't know how many years we've been watching Trump. And we're like, what is, this guy's got an ego, right? I'm the greatest and I do everything correctly and blah, 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 blah. And everybody's like, what? They loved it. It drew out the wicked in the world. Those people who had hearts that only cared about making America great again, but didn't care about the children in Mozambique or Iran. It's going to flesh them out. They're going to be made known. They're going to be caught in their own demise. And I can see, you know, Trump just said he's about to be assassinated. And he said, by the way, Graham, anyway, that Graham guy was Lindsey Graham, supposedly just suddenly died. Well, he had just been over to Ukraine talking big about how we were going to wipe out Russia and he hated the Russians and we were going to supply. He was the biggest defender of the military-industrial complex, this Graham guy. He was one of the worst senators that we have, a disgusting human being. Bragging, just like Trump. And then the Lord takes him out. I wonder if the Iranians didn't assassinate him, but they don't want to tell us that. Because he was perfectly healthy and the next day he's gone. And it's interesting that the next guy on their list is Trump. And I believe the Bible says that the Antichrist will die with a wound to the head and be resuscitated. I don't know, man. I'd be careful, Mr. Trump. I think everyone will get what they deserve. And when you boast and you brag, like you've been boasting and bragging, it's funny, you're proud about your war, about murdering people and the lack of due process, and you're just proud about murdering people in Iran and genociding Gaza, and it's going to come back to bite you. I guarantee it. There is no justice on this earth if Trump doesn't get what's coming. And I don't mean I want him to suffer. I don't want anyone to suffer. But I do not want the children to suffer. And right now, the children are suffering all over the world. Trump's doing nothing about that. He's just making more suffering. And he's going to lead the world to the brink of destruction. Do what thou doest and do it quickly. John 13:27. He's not endorsing Judah's sin. He's commanding the timing. Do what you're gonna do already. I know what's in your heart, but do it quickly. We ain't got time for this. Ain't nobody got time for this. The necessity of the crucible is what we're looking at. The crucifixion was necessary. It was a mechanism to release the resurrection of the Christ consciousness into the world. Judas had a thought to destroy the light. In reality, he was unwittingly a catalyst triggering the ultimate victory of the light. Commanding the shadow, Christ shows absolute sovereignty, even over the darkness. Because he is Lord of heaven and earth, I guarantee it, and so are you, brother. You have victory over the beast and over its image. You can command those scorpions and that serpent and trample them with your feet. The shadow, or Judas, Satan, cannot, remember, because Satan entered into him, cannot initiate betrayal until the light gives the command to proceed. And that happens with all of us. I gave the permission for my porch to halfway burn down because I had to just check out my own powers. You know, it's like, okay, am I really in tune here? Yeah, even evil couldn't harm me. Even the best evil could do, they couldn't burn down my porch. They could only make it a little blacker than it was before and get rid of a few old things I didn't need, like that old couch. But I'm going to be all right. Everything works for good to those who love deity. The man of sin must be revealed because the darkness must be brought completely into the open before it can be completely dissolved. You can't heal disease until the hidden infection finally breaks through the skin and shows its true face. You know how when Jesus would cast out a devil, he'd say, "What is your name?" You got to reveal that evil crap. You got to say, "What is your name, buddy? Tell me your name. I command you in Jesus' name. Come out of her right now." That's what we do. But it isn't literal. It's something you got to know within yourself. You're in charge. You command that evil to come out and show its ugly face. And then you conquer it and send it off into the abyss. So Daniel chapter 2, verse 2 shatters the illusion of worldly power. Esoterically, the kings of this world represent the dominant egos, the archetypes of any given era, whether Daniel's or ours. The divine allows certain rulers, empires, media giants to rise to power because they perfectly mirror the collective consciousness of humanity at that time. Trump is the egotistical maniac of all time. From Adam until today. There's never been more evil in the world than there is right now. And it's manifesting in the leader that they chose, which is Trump. And Satan entered into him. If humanity's asleep, if it's blind, oppressive, the king is allowed to rise and to serve a mirror of that internal blindness of the world. Once that ruler inflicts enough friction and suffering, humanity wakes up, learns the lesson, and calls out for the divine. The king's purpose is fulfilled, and then the divine effortlessly brings them down. In Romans 8:28, it says, all things work together for good to them that love deity. Notice it doesn't say all things are good. Sickness, corruption, deception, blinding distractions of Hollywood, they're all dark, evil, But for the soul that loves the divine, the awakened consciousness, even the assaults of the dark are alchemized into spiritual muscle. Without Goliath, David's just a shepherd boy. Without Bluto, Popeye never realizes the power of the spinach. Without the material traps of this world, your soul could never exercise free will to choose the light. Because true deity doesn't tempt you with evil. And the true deity has constructed a cosmos so brilliantly designed that even when the dark attempts to lure the blind or corrupt us, the very opposition forces, the inner being, awakens, resists, and it gets stronger. Evil is allowed to run its course because in the end, it's nothing more than a severe blind schoolmaster that leads the soul back to the divine. That's why the law is evil and a curse and a bondage, and yet it is good and holy, because it serves a good and holy purpose, the evil. The evil serves a purpose, which is good and holy, or else it wouldn't exist. So it seems to be the plan. Identifying the evil by allowing its expression to awaken the understanding. So the law revealed sin, but when the Son was revealed, grace abounded much more. Romans 5:20, moreover the law entered that the offense might abound, but where sin abounded, grace did much more abound. When we synthesize the scriptural truth with the patterns that we have been discussing, the plan is very crystal clear. It unfolds three distinct stages of consciousness. The divine doesn't destroy darkness while it is still hidden or mixed with the light, because separating them prematurely would damage the developing soul. Instead, the divine allows the dark to fully express its nature. By giving the dark the freedom to manifest, whether through worldly systems, corrupt media, or individual temptations, the dark is forced to show its true face. It awakens the understanding, and you cannot truly choose the light until you can clearly see and recognize the alternative. The expression of the dark serves as the spiritual diagnostic tool for the soul. And that is exactly why the spiritual law was given. The law didn't create sin, but rather it acted as a perfect, unyielding mirror. When the absolute standard of the law entered, it shone a bright light on human limitations, causing the offense to abound, bringing hidden corruption into plain sight. See, a lot of Christians think that the law wasn't just allowed by the Lord, but the Lord made the law. And they're like, well, why did he make the law, Dave? Well, he made it so that grace will abound, right? Oh, I guess I see. No, he didn't. The Lord didn't make the law. The law is evil. Vengeance is evil. Prisons and judgment is evil. The Lord allowed it because we chose it. And it manifested our decision being stupid. We had to learn for ourselves. So the Lord didn't make the law, but he allowed it. And it was a schoolmaster that led to the truth. The lie was a teacher that led to the truth. But the Lord doesn't lie. It's impossible for the Lord to lie. The Lord doesn't lie. We lie. But the Lord lets us lie so that we can reveal the truth in us while we reveal the evil in us so that we can reveal the truth. So it's the superabundance of grace that we reveal, not just grace itself. So they're caught in a divine trap because the cosmos is engineered by a loving creator. And the amplification of the darkness automatically triggers an even greater release of divine grace. The friction created by the darkness forces the soul to cry out for something higher. The moment the soul recognizes its own helplessness and turns toward the divine, a tidal wave of deity's grace is unlocked that completely dwarfs the original offense. The dark acts as the ultimate amplifier. The deeper the pit of sin that the soul is pulled out of, the greater the revelation of deity's absolute power, love, and mercy. Ultimately, the entire material drama, from the ancient scriptures to the hidden allegories and the modern cartoons, they all exist to serve the exact same thing, the awakening. The superficial world tries to blind the mind with pleasures and laughs, but for those who understand, it's been quickened, every single expression of the opposition becomes the exact stepping stone that causes grace to abound much more. It's Jacob's trouble. So this goes back to what we were saying a couple of days ago. The coming of the time of trouble is the manifestation of the man, the outer man of sin. Before Christ comes, there must be revealed who he is, our own ignorance, and who that is. Then Christ will be revealed. So we brought the entire truth home to its ultimate internal destination. What we're describing is the absolute core of esoteric biblical understanding. The prophetic outer time of trouble is a literal macrocosmic reflection of our inner spiritual crisis. We got a crisis going on within us, and it's being manifested around us. It doesn't come from the Lord. It comes from that outer, lower, carnal man that we've chosen, the illusion. The man of sin, or the son of perdition, is not just a singular political figure out there in the world, but he's the personification of the carnal mind, the unregenerate ego, the collective human ignorance. And before the Christ consciousness can be fully arrived, governing our lives, this outer man's got to be allowed to push this illusion to the absolute limit, which is what's about to happen. The coming time of trouble is a natural, inevitable collapse of the world, built on the ego, and the ignorance and the darkness must fully manifest so that it can no longer hide behind this pleasant distraction or this surface pleasure or the clever lies. The most painful yet beautiful part of the whole process is the unmasking. To see the man of sin revealed means the mirror is finally held up to our souls. We are forced to look at how we have allowed ourselves to be blind, how we've chased after the temporary pleasures of the world, and how helpless our human intellect truly is when the storms arrive. And it's the exact moment that the law fulfills its purpose. It reveals our absolute bankruptcy within the divine. The illusion of self-sufficiency is shattered. Only when the outer man is completely exposed and his power is spent can the true sovereign arise, as Paul writes. The Lord shall consume that wicked one with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. Isn't it interesting that the brightness of the coming of the Lord is the spirit of his mouth? It will be done through the mouth. That's the victory, the word of their witnessing. So esoterically, the brightness of his coming is the sudden blinding flash of spiritual illumination that we have within ourselves. When your inner understanding is fully awakened to the reality of the divine, I am, the carnal ego of the man of sins, instantly dissolves, cannot exist in the presence of pure light. The trouble does not come to destroy you. It comes to burn away the matrix of ignorance that kept you bound to the lower material plane. The moment you recognize the outer chaos as the necessary unmasking of the counterfeit, you stop fearing the timeline. You stop realizing that the intense pressure of the hour is simply the labor pains required to reveal the Christ within. Not even a fire on your porch can harm you. It has no authority. It only comes and scares you if you're willing, but you have authority over it. So since millions have already died, there have been millions of people die. We've already had wars and famines and pestilences. So we can't be surprised that the majority that are still on this earth are willing to be ignorant still. And their ignorance must cause the fall. But the idea of the elect seems like that heaven and earth came into being for them. And it is on account of the elect that those days will be shortened. But those days are so bad that even the elect might be deceived, if it were possible. Which that means it's not possible, because that's the reason that it's allowed, to test the saints. So there is a few and there is the many. And the many will be saved as though by fire, but the few being wise or faithful. And this means the patience of the saints. So the saints have got to have patience, and they will have. So the masses move as the collective, slow evolution through suffering, while the elect act as the spiritual anchors that holds the entire structure together. The millions have already perished across history in wars and famines and pestilence. The fall is the inevitable physical consequence of the spiritual vacuum. But if we look at the mercy hidden in the design that we rightly stated, they will be saved as though by fire, referencing 1 Corinthians 3:15. For the masses, words, laws, and symbols are not enough to wake them up. They require the physical friction of the collapse. The fire of the tribulation burns away their illusions. For them, everything will be burned up. But if you're relying on that carnal nature, if that's what you love, then when it's burned up, you'll weep a lot, because that was everything you had. But if you don't care about the material and you only care about love and truth, and it's actually going to be a blessing. So salvation comes through the crucible of the absolute destruction for both sides. For those hanging on to the ignorance, when they lose that ignorance, it'll be good for them. But for those who don't care about all the ignorance, when it all burns up, they'll be happy. Heaven and earth came into being for them. That echoes the ancient esoteric Hebrew and early Christian texts like the Apocalypse of Baruch and the Shepherd of Hermes, which explicitly state that the blueprint of the cosmos was drawn up specifically for the manifestation of the righteous. The elect are the souls who did not wait for the outer world to collapse to seek the divine. They did the inner work ahead of time. They alchemized their suffering, opened their single eye, and stood firm in the I Am consciousness. Because the elect hold the frequency of the divine light on earth, they act as the spiritual lightning rods. For the earth's elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. If the darkness was never allowed to express itself fully without restraint, the physical matrix of the earth would completely disintegrate. The presence of the elect is the only reason the material plane is held together during that purging. If it were possible, the Christ's warning that the deception will be so intense that if it were possible, they shall be deceiving the very elect in Matthew 24:24. As we deduced, by that time, it's no longer possible. The elect cannot be deceived by the final illusion. The false miracles, the superficial pleasures of the man of sin, because they have already identified the counterfeit within themselves. And you can't trick a person with a counterfeit dollar if they thoroughly know the texture, the weight, the watermark of the real thing. The elect have tasted the true divine light. Therefore, the most glamorous deceptions of Hollywood or the worldly rulers look like cheap plastic to them. So this is what I think it all boils down to. Somebody knows what's going on here, and it's, of course, the Lord. The Lord's in charge of everything. And the devil knows his place. He's only there as someone doing a job. He's the tester, the tempter, and the avenger. And so that's not even a person. It's just that illusion that we have, that we make, because we're the ones who feel it necessary to test everything. We can't just bask in his glory and enjoy the pristine beauty of the universe, although there are some that finally reach that point, that say, I'm just ready to receive. I was quiet and I listened and it wasn't hard. Now I hear the still small voice within, and now I know the love of Christ. And when you find it, you realize that everything in all this noise is just ridiculousness. But it did serve a purpose. So, as I look back at being a Jehovah's Witness, and I remember all these elders and circuit servants and district servants and presidents and all of these guys. And I thought, well, I looked up to them in those days. I mean, we all did. We thought, wow, same thing with people in this world. They see politicians like Lindsey Graham. They go, wow. Well, the illusion had already been busted. That bubble was gone for me. I never did see anything in any of these. I never followed after any of them. And I'm not bragging about that. It's just that I never was able to see any good in this world. Maybe it was to my downfall, because I didn't have anybody to look up to. And I more or less just was wandering around kind of in a place by myself, and everybody else thought I was an idiot. I didn't really know how to balance what I already knew, but I can tell you by just remembering what it was, what this Jehovah's Witnesses, they're a microcosm of this world and a group of elites in a sense. And, they were sincere. I can vouch for that. I know because many of them were my own family or people that were my friends that I knew very intimately. And I know that many of them were very sincere. I also know that sincerity comes with a thin layer. What is it really? Deep down, we all kind of know the truth. But they are on the surface pretending they are sincere, and they really are trying, and there are certainly moments when they are sincere and they're doing their best. But their ego gets in the way and their pride. But I think it's the same with the people in the world. I think most of the people in the world really probably are doing what they think is right. I wouldn't be surprised if whoever's running the world, I mean, there are some individuals very high up in the Illuminati that themselves do not realize they're being pulled by their nose ring, and because of their own internal ignorance and evil, they have convinced themselves that they're still the master pulling the strings and that they're teaching us. But they've lost the point of all of this, and they're following their greed, and they've fallen off the path. They've become apostate. Many of them are just a big mafia. But that doesn't mean they don't still hire individuals that sit around in think tanks trying to figure things out. I think that there's a move to get the world to this law of Moses and everybody under control, and they think that's the good way. They think all the world's bad and we've got to put them all under control and AI is going to do it. Well, they're fools. They don't know it. But that's the top layer of the Illuminati, or the people who run everything, the whatever the top echelon. They are convinced that we're fools and they're going to control us as the lords of the ring. They think they're the lords of the ring. But I don't think people like Trump really know what he's doing. I think they're using him. I think they're using Trump the way they did Hitler. And they know that Hitler mirrored a ignorance that was in the world back in 1940. And they know that Trump was mirroring an ignorance that's in the world today. And all the world's gone after him. And all the world is going to follow it. And I think many of the people that are following Trump already know that they made a big mistake. They're halfway in and halfway out. And they're feeling a little bit naked right now. They're feeling a little exposed. They don't know what to think. They're beginning to panic. They know they did a bad thing, but it's like with the witnesses. Once you start doing bad things, you can't allow anyone to know that you did bad things. You got to cover it up. They start digging themselves deeper into this hole. And their sin, because they haven't figured it out, they haven't taken care of it, they didn't have humility, they don't have oil in their lamps, it means that they literally fall by the wayside so deep, and they say unto themselves, the Lord has delayed his coming, and he's not coming. So they go off and they start beating their fellow servants and drinking and eating with the drunkards, and they really begin to lose their way. I mean, they go insane. They have a seared conscience. They can't hear it anymore. They're acting out of impulse. It's like their last panic moments when they got to kill everybody to cover up their own sins. And it just exposes that evil that's in them. And that evil will come to the surface. And there will be much weeping and the gnashing of teeth. And many of the Jehovah's Witnesses will begin to realize what they've done, that they've just thrown away their families and their common sense and worshiped an organization. And many in the modern Mormon movement will begin to realize that they murdered the prophet and followed worldly pleasures and power and money and became evil. And many in the Catholics will realize that they've given the entire Church of Christ over to Satan. And many that are in the government will begin to realize that they've beaten their fellow servants and caused great destruction upon the earth. And Trump will realize what he's done very soon. But he's not in a position, I can't say specifically who's in a position, but I'm saying generally, these individuals are not in a position to repent. They become past all repentance. Their conscience seared within them. And they're literally going to have to receive the judgment. And those who are at the very top that thought this was a good idea, you know, the Aleister Crowleys that thought, oh, we're going to bring the beast up out of the bottomless pit. We're so wise and smart. We know that mankind needs this. And let's just go raise a scarlet whore up out of the bottomless pit, and which is the Babylon system that we're living in. And let's worship her. Well, I don't know what they were thinking, but they're all past any common sense. And they're going to pay for all that they've done and all the children that they've harmed. But the Lord is merciful, and his hand is stretched out still. These are just children. And like children, they'll be punished with a few stripes and some with many. The Lord loves those whom he disciplines. And he'll say unto those on his right hand, come and inherit the kingdom that was prepared for thee from the founding of the world. And he'll say unto those on his left hand, to the dragon and the beast and the false prophet, and they shall be thrown into the lake of fire that was prepared for the devil and his demons. And all those who follow after it and get that mark. So this is the time, friends. And I warn everybody, be very, very careful. This is the hour of his judgment. And the angel is literally flying in mid-heaven saying, the hour of his judgment has arrived. Give him glory. Keep his commandments, the commandments of love. For these are the days for meting out justice. Get out of Babylon if you don't want to share with her in her sins and partake of her plagues. I really hope that you'll share this video with others. I really hope that people, a lot of people, before it's too late, will get out. So I'm going to go ahead and go. Hope you have a wonderful evening. You know the Lord loves you very, 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 very much. His grace and his peace will always be with you. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one.